Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This book was published in 1898, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Christopher Hurt. So this was a really fun Victorian alien invasion story, so if you want to go read it, I highly recommend that you go do that and then come back to hear my opinions. So I really enjoyed this book. For some reason, when I started it, I didn't realize quite how old it was, and I didn't realize it had been published during the Victorian era, which made it way more fun. I thought the narration style was really interesting. It was written as kind of a dossier from someone who had survived this alien invasion and was reporting to the rest of humanity on his experiences. And that whole writing style just kind of reminded me of Dracula, or of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I think it was a really popular sort of narration choice for that time period, and it makes the story feel so Victorian, and I just loved it. Though I did think it was really interesting, because of that narration style, hardly any of the characters are named, especially not the ones who are close to the narrator, so he just refers to my wife and my brother. And random side characters will get full names, but the people who the narrator cares about most just don't have any name at all. This book was so fascinating to me because it felt kind of like the genesis of alien invasion stories. And now we're so used to alien invasions, and any new book or movie that comes out about them has to have this unique way of looking at them and this different angle, and we're so used to the general idea of an alien invasion that the people's reaction in this book feels strange because they haven't read hundreds of other alien invasion stories. So like when the aliens first got there, people were gathering around the pit and looking inside, and they thought this was so interesting, and they were certain that the aliens wouldn't be nearly as advanced as humans and that they'd be wiped out in no time. And that's so interesting, and I guess that is the way that humanity probably would have looked at it. We've had so many alien invasion stories now that you expect the aliens to be more intelligent than us and have way superior technology to us and all this stuff, but it was fun to see that this was like the first reaction before people had read about aliens all the time, that they were just kind of fascinated and thought, oh, there's an interesting animal, we'll dominate it just like we've dominated all the other animals on planet Earth, of course. It was also interesting that most of the characters in the book seemed to expect the aliens to look basically like humans, and they were so surprised that the aliens were these blobby tentacled things, which is kind of what we expect now of the stereotypical alien. That's what we think of, unless it's like the translucent green Roswell, New Mexico type aliens. And so I'm guessing that this book is where that whole trope started, and it's so great to see the very first occurrence of this very popular trope. I thought all of the aliens' weapons and transportation were very fascinating. They had their heat rays, which is what would make sense from like a Victorian technological standpoint. They didn't know anything about computers or anything like that. There wasn't anything about lasers. I guess maybe it's supposed to be kind of like a laser. I don't know. But they just have these heat rays, and then they have their tripod things that they walk on. And it just was so vivid, and it made such a strong impression. And I just thought that was very fun. I thought the protagonist and his brother were very interesting because they were both painted as kind of absolutely perfect human beings. And so to me, it kind of read as them being extremely arrogant, but I don't know that the author intended it to be that way. I think he just intended for it to be that these people were superior to most other people around them. The narrator is calm, everyone else runs away panicking, and he goes and hides in a river, and he always knows what to do. He's strong enough, he can beat any man in a physical confrontation, and he can outthink anyone he comes across. And he just is better than everyone he meets, and it's such an interesting way to write a character. And his brother is exactly the same way, He can figure everything out, and I thought it was amazing. There was this scene where he comes across two women, and one of them has a handgun, and he takes it from her and assures her that he knows how to use it, even though he doesn't, because that way she'll feel better. And that just seems like such a stupid thing to do, assuring her that he knows how to use something he's never held before. And these characters were so incredibly arrogant, but in the world of the story it was earned because they somehow were better at everything than every other human being. I did think that the story of the invasion was very well told, because you know that the narrator is describing these aliens to other people who haven't seen them and won't have a chance to see them, so you would assume that humanity won. But even with that narration style, toward the end of it, it feels like the aliens probably will win and humanity will be completely stamped out. So that is some very good storytelling to make you believe that, even when you have information that contradicts it. And the aliens were pretty terrifying, you know, especially when you hear about them drinking people's blood kind of through a straw, and it sounds quite terrifying. And when the narrator comes across a man who's predicting what life is going to be like for humanity, I was starting to get these really creepy dystopian world vibes. It was kind of like the feeling I got when I read Watership Down, of just something is very much not right, but people are going to tolerate it, even though it is really creepy and not okay. And that was just so vividly worded. It was really creepy. And then I thought the ending was great. That it turned out that the aliens, the reason their whole invasion failed was not because of humanity, but was because of germs. I looked it up, and it turns out that people had known about bacteria for a couple hundred years, but they had only recently discovered that bacteria caused illness. So Louis Pasteur was doing his research about how bacteria relates to illness in the early 1860s. And this book was published in 1898. So people had only known about bacteria contributing to disease for less than 40 years. And it would make sense to an audience of Victorian people for aliens to know how to travel across space and invade a planet, but not know to look for bacteria and worry about germs. And now that seems kind of ridiculous to me. Of course, you would worry about germs, you'd worry about oxygen content, all this stuff, because we've had so much fiction about space travel. But at the time, it seemed very new, and it seemed like this cool, fancy way that humanity could defeat the aliens. It kind of reminded me of the way humans defeat the aliens in the movie Independence Day with these newly discovered computer viruses, where as it ages, it doesn't work so well, and you think, of course, the aliens would have known about this, otherwise they couldn't have functioned. But at the time the book came out, it seems like this new cutting-edge technology that humanity has been so smart to think of. So I enjoyed this book a lot. It was really fun to see the beginnings of the alien invasion story and to look at this very common sci-fi trope through a Victorian lens. So I liked that very much, and I had a lot of fun with this book.